on to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Wednesday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. This podcast was streamed live on twitch.tv/primetimepk. For Wednesdays, you can get these shows a day early if you check out the live streams, twitch.tv/primetimepk. Do them Tuesdays at noon Mountain Time over there. So coming up on this show today, it is NFL Power Rankings going into another very big week in the National Football League. We'll also examine the quarterback situations around the NFL. Who's a quarterback needy team, and what are the options for them out there? Plus, we will look at what is an unbelievably stacked first quarter of the year in the world of boxing as we continue to get ready for the main event of the year, Usyk Fury 2. So all of that is coming up today. Again, we're presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca for more great Calgary merch. And also follow me on social media. I'm at Primetime Klein. Let's get on with the show. NFL Power Rankings going into Week 16 in the National Football League. We run through every team, ranking them 32 through 1, and letting you know what we thought of all of those teams. So let's start at the very bottom. The New York Giants beat down by the Ravens again this week. They're not a good football team and feel like they've kind of locked up this spot at the very, very bottom. At number 31, it is the Tennessee Titans. It really does feel like the Will Levis experience is over. It has gotten ugly. He just isn't improving at any rate that seems responsible to continue to use him. So it feels like they're going to be in the market for a quarterback here. And we're going to be looking at quarterback situations coming up in a little bit. At 30, it was the Vegas Raiders. Monday Night Football. It was ugly. This team can't move anything on offense. And generally speaking, when the commentators spend the entire fourth quarter talking about how you need everything, and this team is just way behind, and then are talking about, well, at least they're playing hard. That's not a good thing. And so the Raiders lose a hard-fought battle, but a really ugly game closing out the week in the National Football League. At 29, it is the Jacksonville Jaguars. It really takes a special team to make the Jets look good, but Jacksonville pulled it off this week. At number 28, it is the New York Jets, who can't even tank right as they pick up a win here over Jacksonville and kind of move themselves out of a spot where they could do the hilarious thing of drafting a young quarterback with Aaron Rodgers, looking to kind of maybe come back, maybe not, for another season with the Jets. So our bottom five: the Giants, the Titans, the Raiders, Jacksonville, and the Jets. Normally this is where we would look at, well, who here is going to be drafting a quarterback? But right now we're going to skip that because we're looking at a bigger quarterback picture thing coming up a little bit later on here on the show. At 27, it is the New England Patriots. 26, the Chicago Bears. Not an amazing performance on Monday night against Minnesota. At 25, it is the Cleveland Browns. They shouldn't be this high. But there's a lot of awful teams right now. And so while I think they are bad and looked bad on Sunday against Kansas City, it's the Chiefs. They're, contrary to what a lot of people will tell you, they're a good team. So I don't think losing to them is really all that bad. But also, like, they're not worse right now than Chicago. They're not worse right now than New England or the Jets, Jags, Raiders, any of those. This is a team that is bad, but not that bad right now. At 24, it is the Carolina Panthers. A lot came crashing back down to earth this week for Carolina in a really bad performance against Dallas. At number 23, it is New Orleans. Really bad team, but almost pulled out a win this week. 22, it is the Dallas Cowboys, who at least showed some life in their game with Carolina this week. 21, it is the San Francisco 49ers. They should be dropped after an ugly game, but again, too many bad teams to be dropping them right now. At 20, it is the Atlanta Falcons. Again, should be dropped after an ugly game, but too many bad teams right now. At 19, it's the Indianapolis Colts. Again, should be dropped after an ugly game, but too many bad teams right now, which is a really bad thing to be saying when we're getting to 19, but that's where we're at in the NFL right now. The Miami Dolphins are my team at 18. They are, I think, the biggest drop for me this week, coming off of that loss against Houston. And yeah, Houston's a fine team, but it just, it feels done out there in Miami. And then you look at how some of the other teams are playing right now, you look at who Miami beat, and you just have to drop this team down further and further in the power rankings based off of how it is looking once again. At 17, it is the Cincinnati Bengals. 16, the Arizona Cardinals. At 15, it's Houston. Even with a win, I had to drop them. We talked about how there are just too many bad teams. There's also too many good teams, and too many teams that just keep passing the Houston Texans by right now in terms of how this all feels from a just power rankings standpoint. This team just, it feels like something is missing out in Houston right now. Into the 14th spot goes the LA Chargers. Bit of a concerning performance against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A, didn't put up a whole lot of offense against a defense that gives up a lot of offense. And then B, defense looked bad when that is kind of supposed to be their calling card. So a bit of a concern there. And it drops them below their division mates, the Denver Broncos, who didn't look great against the Indianapolis Colts, but ended up with a pretty convincing win nonetheless. At 12, it is Washington. Said this on the show on Monday. Feels like it's starting to turn into a pumpkin a little bit, and teams are starting to catch on just a little bit more to what they're doing. Still a very talented team, still a very bright future, but top 10 team in the NFL? Probably not. At 11, it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Just so impressed with what they were able to do against the Chargers this week. I feel like you have to be excited about what's happening out in Tampa Bay right now. At 10, moving into the top 10, it is the LA Rams, not the purtiest of wins against Brock Purdy, didn't mean to do that, and the San Francisco 49ers, but win is a win. At 9, it's Seattle. I still feel like when these teams are at their best, Seattle beats the Rams. But it is very, very close right now. And the Seahawks, that offensive line is a problem. And there's no way of fixing it now. So they're just going to have to try to survive it as the season rolls on. At 8, it is the Minnesota Vikings. Solid win against a team that they should beat on Monday night. 7, the Green Bay Packers. Said it before that this was finally the Packers team that I was expecting to show up. Finally, we got what we were looking for from this Green Bay Packers team, and because of it now, you start to take them seriously a little bit more in the NFC. At 6, it is the Baltimore Ravens. You don't get to move up when you beat the crap out of the New York Giants. You should beat the crap out of the New York Giants. Our top 5, the teams remain the same, but we have some changes. At 5, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Like I said before on the show yesterday, this team, I think, showed that they are not among the elites with their loss against the Philadelphia Eagles, but I don't think that they showed enough negatively to drop them down into that Baltimore, Green Bay, Minnesota area. Like, they feel like they are a one-team tier below a couple levels in the NFL right now. At 4, the Kansas City Chiefs. Would be very concerning if Patrick Mahomes couldn't play for the next couple of weeks, but they have some wiggle room atop the AFC. At number 3, the former number 1, drops to 3 as the Detroit Lions lose to the Buffalo Bills, so they fall down to 3. At 2, the Philadelphia Eagles stay put with their win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. And at number 1, it is the Buffalo Bills. You beat the team that was number 1 while also having a win over the team that's number 4. You get to move up even though the team right behind you and the team that was ahead of you last week beat the team that was in 5th. So a couple really good wins for the teams at the top. But the Buffalo Bills are the new team at the very top of the NFL power rankings going into week 16. So that's where every team stacks up now. But for a lot of teams, it is time to look ahead to the future. So today, we're going to be looking at the quarterback situation across the league. Who's good, who needs some help, and who is a little on the fence, a little fence sitting going on some teams in the NFL, and what reinforcements could be coming. So, let's talk football. It is the time of year where the teams at the bottom part of the standings start to look to next year, and with the college football bowl season well underway and the college football playoff happening this weekend, I thought a pretty good time to take a look and see who are some of the quarterbacks who could be coming in to save the day, whose days need to be saved, and where could some professional help be coming as well. So this is the look at the quarterback situation across the National Football League. Let's start with the quarterbacks who are going to be available. Using the ESPN draft rankings, here are the top 4 quarterbacks. These are the top the quarterbacks that are in the top 50 on their draft board. And I should say, very, very quickly, that this is not about the teams that these rankings are not where these quarterbacks are going to go, because teams can't help themselves. This is about where these guys rank talent-wise compared to their draft. And so the number 1 quarterback available, according to ESPN's big board, is Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback out of Colorado. Has an electric wide receiver with him who also plays corner, and has a lot of talents, but also hasn't had to play with a lot of structure. Now can't, because he has basically this for an offensive line, but there are some questions about him. But the best version of this looks incredible and is franchise changing. And I think at worst, they were talking about it on the broadcast, at worst, this guy's a starter, I think, in the NFL. But I do think when you see the last couple of quarterbacks who have gone number 1, you get a little bit concerned about, oh no, yeah, he's a little bit off target sometimes, and a little bit off this, a little bit off that, but it's fine. He's got the tools. It'll be all good. You can certainly see some teams being a little bit hesitant with that. Second best quarterback available is Cam Ward out of the U from the University of Miami as the 15th overall player. Again, he was in a lot of firefights this year just based on how that defense played out in Miami, and so the numbers are going to look a little bit inflated because he just needed to do everything. But again, I think there is a starting quarterback there. And then you have to go all the way until what would be a projected 2nd round pick if we were just going by best player available. And it is Quinn Ewers, the quarterback out of Texas. Not even the best quarterback on his team at times, but he has the 34th ranking on the draft board. And then Jalen Milroe, quarterback out of Alabama. He is the number 49th player on the ESPN big board. So we are not talking about the quality of players that you had at the quarterback position last year coming out of the draft with Jaden Daniels and Drake May, and Caleb Williams and all of that. We are talking about starter, he'll start, but not necessarily your franchise quarterback, with the exception of maybe Shedeur if you get the best case scenario out of him. In terms of quarterbacks that'll be available in free agency, the belle of the ball is certainly going to be Sam Darnold. His contract is up after a career year with the Minnesota Vikings. Another one who is available is Russell Wilson. Both he and Justin Fields are available in free agency. And then she falls off a cliff pretty quick with Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Jacoby Brissett, and Jameis Winston as some of the other quarterbacks that are available. So this is a really difficult year if you are going to be a quarterback needy team. And when we look at the teams that are going to be quarterback needy, the situations are desperate in a couple of these, but I don't know, like this feels like a weird mix, because on the one hand, like Cleveland is quarterback needy. They have, right now, negative $18 million in salary cap space. And we're going to assume that's not going to improve, because if we're taking them as a quarterback-needy team, that probably means they're cutting Deshaun Watson and his $172 million dead cap. Now, the talk right now is that they are not going to be doing that. I would be surprised if they don't, but again, we talked about it. One of the ways you do that is kind of the way Denver just did it, where Russell Wilson is gone. You cut him. It's a whole lot of dead cap, but you supplement it by bringing in a quarterback on their rookie deal. That quarterback turns out to be awesome, and all of a sudden you're a playoff team. That is the exact model that Cleveland is going to be looking to follow. I just don't know if they're going to be in a spot to draft one of the guys that could kind of help this offense out a little bit. Also, so these are the quarterback needy teams. Cleveland, the Giants, that one is so obvious that the Giants need a quarterback. The New York Jets, I have in here. We will see what happens with Aaron Rodgers. I would suggest even if he comes back, this is a team that needs a quarterback. The Tennessee Titans, again, that one is obvious. And the Vegas Raiders with $111 million in salary cap space. And so it feels like one of these teams, at least one of these teams, is going to miss out on something. Because right now, I would suggest you have 4 starting options at the quarterback spot available right now. With, in the draft, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, and in free agency, Sam Darnold and Russell Wilson. After that, I think you can make a very compelling case for Justin Fields to be a starting quarterback as well. But we have, if we cut out the Jets, then we have 4 starting options for 4 quarterback needy teams. And so maybe that works out. But then again, you are hoping for best case scenario and Sam Darnold doing it in a way that he's never done it before. Also, just becoming available because Minnesota right now has, going into this offseason, $78 million in salary cap space. So there is a very real chance that Darnold isn't even available for one of these teams. And then you are getting a couple of quarterbacks in the draft that just don't feel like they are ready to step in and change your franchise. Like with the Raiders, you have Brock Bowers that he is throwing to, and that's it. I guess maybe Jacoby Myers as well. On the Giants, you have Malik Neighbors in that offense, and that's it. And neither team can block worth a damn. So you're not putting these kids into the best situation right now. But then in free agency, if you want to go out and just get a placeholder the way the Raiders did, like, let's take a dart throw on Trey Lance, shall we? It doesn't feel overly inspired. So when we look at the teams that are kind of on the fence right now, I have 3. Minnesota is one, because if they lose out on Sam Darnold, they probably just go with JJ McCarthy and just feel fine with that. But I would imagine that they would probably, if they lose out on Sam Darnold, they probably go with another one. And then there's the awkward conversation in Minnesota about, do you actually want to keep Sam Darnold because you used a lot of draft capital on JJ McCarthy? Or is there a trade possibility with one of these teams that is very obviously quarterback needy? The other ones that are on the fence, I have the Colts. They have $48 million in salary cap space going into next year. It would cost them $20 million to cut Anthony Richardson, which at this point, the way teams have been cutting quarterbacks, that's pennies for them. You can make that up in a couple of restructured contracts. And so if the Colts are seeing what we are seeing, in that Anthony Richardson just kind of isn't it, then they kind of enter the fray. And same thing with New Orleans. Now, they're in a bit of a different situation because for the 8th year in a row, their salary cap situation is abysmal. And there are ways you can get around all of it. But they right now projected to have negative $78 million in salary cap space, which makes it tough to find your quarterback of the future. And then again, this team has won too many games. Now, if teams were smart and didn't reach on Quinn Ewers or Jalen Milroe, then maybe you get them, even you're reaching a little bit in the middle part of the first round, but maybe you get a bit of a steal there and can try to fix some things that way. But again, we're talking about a Saints team that has quite a few holes across the board, even after all the injured players start to come back out there in New Orleans. And it would cost them, $50 million to cut Derek Carr. So that's where I think this conversation gets interesting, because on the one hand, we have established we don't think Anthony Richardson is it. Now, he needs more time, but if I'm the Colts, I don't know if I want to give him more time anymore. That being said, we've already talked about how there aren't a whole lot of options out there at the quarterback position, and there's just not a whole lot there that is going to come in and save you. Same with the Saints. Maybe you take a shot on a one-year thing with Jacoby Brissett, or you just kind of eat it with Derek Carr. We're not going to be good anyway. There isn't a whole lot of options out there. Let's just keep rolling with it. Now, that's a real sell to an owner. Like, hey, just by the way, we're not going to make this change at the most important position, probably in sports, because we don't think we're very good. And so why would we spend extra money to still be not good? The GM, the owner could then very reasonably say, oh, okay, excellent logic. You're fired for putting us in this situation, and have a great day. So again, you feel like you have a couple of teams that could be looking to make some moves and enter this quarterback battle. But because, again, there just isn't a whole lot there, I don't know. They might just kind of stick it out with their guy for one more year and just kind of see. And then you have the teams that are all set at quarterback, just to rattle them off here. Arizona, Kyler's fine. It's not perfect, but it's not bad. Atlanta, they're set. Whether it's with Kirk Cousins next year, and I have him, he's the only one in the too much to cut category because it is $65 million in dead cap if they cut him next year. So that's too much to take on for what is a talented roster. But yeah, so it is Arizona, Atlanta, Baltimore, Buffalo, Carolina, Chicago, Cincinnati, Dallas. They just signed Dak to an extension. Denver, obviously, Detroit, Green Bay, Houston. I have Jacksonville on here. They just signed Trevor Lawrence to an extension. And again, there's nothing out there that comes close to what Trevor Lawrence could be if you get that figured out. Chiefs, Avi. The Chargers, the Rams I looked at for a second, but again, they're a team that just based on what's available right now, you probably don't need to sweat it with this right now because it doesn't seem like that option is going to be there in a real significant way. Miami, New England, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Seattle, Tampa Bay, and Washington. Those are the teams that are set right now. So I think it is going to be a real interesting kind of battle here in the offseason where you are going to have probably two kids drafted way too early in the NFL draft, in Sanders and Ward. And then you may even have a couple other kids drafted way too early right now in Ewers and in Jalen Milroe. And like, honestly, in Milroe's case, he may end up being the best quarterback of the bunch. But right now, 49th overall on the ESPN big board. And I think that there is a very good chance he goes like top 15 in the draft. So let's take a look now, finally, to kind of put a bow on this, to see where everyone could stack up and where the mistakes could be made. Let's assume, because I kind of am, let's assume that Minnesota is keeping Sam Darnold. They have $78 million in salary cap space, which is less than some of the other teams who have that cap space available. The one other interesting part of this, and sorry, I'm just kind of bouncing around with all of these things, but the other interesting part of this is the Raiders are the only team in the quarterback needy group that have also a top 5 amount of salary cap space available to them. So if they wanted to go out and just spend stupid money on Sam Darnold, they could do it. But then you have so many holes that you need to fill on both sides of the football that I just don't know if it is necessarily worth it for that team to do it. But then again, it's this back and forth. And it's why team building can be so frustrating when you have teams in the NFL just, fuck it, quarterback. Because again, the Raiders are not ready for a young quarterback to come in and lead the charge. And even if they wanted to try to do what New England is doing, where you draft Shedeur Sanders and then you bring in Jacoby Brissett and just let him be a sitting duck out there for a little bit, they're still kind of new in Vegas, and that wasn't a rowdy crowd last night for Monday Night Football. And when you have Shedeur and maybe Dion coming along with him, it is bright lights, big city, and there's billboards and all of that. That is a very, very difficult quarterback to have sitting on your bench. And then when you look at Deion Sanders and a lot of the talk that they might Eli Manning this thing, you just be like, we're not going to go there. I think assurances will have to be made that kid's going to have to start right away, and the Raiders are just not ready for that. Same thing. Like right now, the top 5 picks in the draft would be the actually, I'm going to pull this up. Not that I don't trust you, Score app, but ESPN does kind of explain the tiebreakers a little bit more, and so obviously these could change, but let's take a look at what the top picks in the NFL would be at this exact moment in time. All right, I do think they have it correct, so sorry, Score app. But the New York Giants would be drafting first. Quarterback needy team. It would be so hard for this team to just not go quarterback there. And then at 2, Raiders. Same thing. It would be so difficult for the Raiders to not go quarterback in that spot. And I have said here, I am a Raider fan. I have said that is the direction I want them to go, even though they aren't ready for it. It's been so bad, the quarterback play for so long with the Raiders, that you kind of just want a guy. And that's the trap people fall into, because I feel like I'm a bit more rational about this stuff than others are. And even I'm falling into the irrational trap that is that sort of a thing. And then after that, like you have Carolina, not quarterback needy. So now, if you do have two teams in the Raiders and the Giants that reach on quarterback, now Carolina basically gets the best player in the draft, whether it's a great pass rusher, another weapon that you can throw out there with Bryce Young, a very good offensive lineman, of which they have none of right now. That makes sense. And then New England, kind of same thing. They have the most salary cap space. So you could absolutely see a world where New England drafts a playmaker on the offensive side of the football and then also goes out and signs T. Higgins. And now look at this. You have a dynamic offense one more time in New England. Tennessee at 5 is where I think this gets very fascinating. Because if we assume the Raiders and Giants reach, and we're saying that Cam Ward from 15 to 2 is a reach, then Quinn Ewers from 34 to 5 is a go-go gadget arms stretch. That would be a almost franchise-altering mistake. Although, again, if it works out, because I think Ewers can be pretty good, or with a Jalen Milroe, could be pretty good, then all of a sudden you have found your guy. And that is what is so tantalizing about this whole thing. But I think this year in particular, a lot of mistakes are going to be made because there isn't that number one guy. And you have teams in high draft spots who are desperate for the number one. And then the added thing on top of it is you have someone who has the name value of a number one, bringing it all around. So that is the quarterback situation right now in the NFL. Let's put a bow on this one today and look at the boxing schedule. Obviously, for those on the live stream, we talked about it before, this is a gigantic weekend in the world of boxing and the last big fight in boxing this year, in what has been a very good year, 2024. So now let's take a chance to see what else is coming up in boxing. And Q1 in the world of boxing in 2025 looks like it is going to be spectacular, with a lot of pound for pound top fighters right away, right out of the gates, fighting in 2025. So let's take a look. It is the world of boxing getting the limelight this weekend as Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury go head-to-head for a second time for the heavyweight championship of the world. And with the spotlight on the sport, thought now would be a good time to take advantage of that and show everyone what is coming up in the boxing world that we can get excited about here in the first part of 2025. So let's begin. January 24th. He is the pound for pound king right now, and he is fighting again out in Tokyo, Japan. It is Naoya Inoue taking on Sam Goodman. 12 rounds for Inoue's undisputed junior featherweight championship. I have said before, what this guy does in the ring is beautiful, destructive art that just comes in the way of violence. The punching power that he has is spectacular. And I think if you were to stack up everyone's skill set and put them at the same height, Inoue could knock out a building. He is that good. He has that kind of speed, that kind of precision, that kind of power. And so we get another opportunity to see the number one pound for pound fighter in the world step into the ring in the early part of 2025. Then a week later in Las Vegas, Nevada, the PBC on Prime Video, it will be David Benavidez taking on David Morrell. 12 rounds for Benavidez's interim light heavyweight championship and Morrell's WBA lightweight title. Light heavyweight title. That would be quite the discrepancy. Light heavyweight against the lightweight. That would be a lot. But Benavidez, this feels like, I don't want to say a stay busy fight because Morrell is a good fighter. It is, if you're not going to get the Canelo fight, this is almost as good as you can do right now for Benavidez. And for him, just keep collecting belts and keep doing that at a weight class that Canelo seems to have his eye on. And maybe that is a way you can kind of goad Canelo into a fight, is he wants to be a guy at light heavyweight, and he wants to kind of slay that dragon after it didn't go well for him the first time. And so maybe Benavidez picking up a real recognized WBA light heavyweight championship, maybe that drags Canelo into a fight potentially. Might be a bit of a tight turn to do that on Cinco de Mayo, but maybe gets him for Mexican independence off in September. Later that month, in February, we get one of the more stacked cards in the history of the sport. Again, with all the complications that come with Riyadh season, but on DAZN pay-per-view, it will be for the undisputed light heavyweight championship of the world. It'll be Artur Beterbiev taking on Dmitry Bivol. 12 rounds. Beterbiev with the convincing-ish win when these two fought the first time. And I said before, like, this has a chance to be an epic rivalry. Two of the best fighters in the sport going head-to-head. They're going to do it again in the early part of 2025. But that is just the start of it. This card also has Carlos Adames against Hamza Shiraz for the WBC Middleweight Championship. Virgil Ortiz is fighting Israel Madrimov. You have Callum Smith on this one against Joshua Buatsi. Apologies there. For a interim light heavyweight championship. And Shakur Stevenson, who has certainly fallen out of favor with people, but I still think is one of the more talented fighters in the sport. If he has a big performance in him on this kind of a stage, that could propel him into a very big 2025. He will be fighting and looking to defend his WBC lightweight championship. And then Zhilei Zhang is also fighting for a vacant interim heavyweight championship. So just an unbelievably stacked card on DAZN pay-per-view at the back part of February. And then a week later, it is Las Vegas, Nevada again. PBC pay-per-view on Prime Video with Gervonta "Tank" Davis taking on Lamont Roach Jr. 12 rounds for Davis's WBA lightweight title. So in the first part of this year, let's just go from right now. I'm recording this on Tuesday, December 17th at 1:41 p.m. Mountain Time. Between now and March 2nd, we have pound-for-pound #1 fighter in the world right now, Naoya Inoue, fighting for a championship. We have a top 5 fighter in Beterbiev fighting for a championship. We have a top 5 fighter in Tank Davis fighting for a championship. We have guys in the top 10 in David Benavidez and Dmitry Bivol fighting for championships. This is an unbelievable start to the year in the sport of boxing, and the pound-for-pound rankings will certainly be all shook up after the first quarter of 2025. All right, that's the show. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today. Again, check out seaofdead403.ca for some great Calgary merch. Check me out on social media. I am at Primetime Klein. If you are tuning into this right away, we have a video game stream on twitch.tv/primetimepk coming up starting at 9 Mountain going until noon. A nice 3-hour stream with the Calgary Flames. Plus, on Thursday, it is going to be another full podcast stream as we do the Thursday and Friday over on Twitch. So, thank you guys so much for hanging out today. Talk again soon. Have a great one, everyone. I am out.